Parliament
Well, he just
initiative.
said that let him know.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Our first speaker is Ms. Constance Berry Newman, the board chair of ARDN and the former Deputy Secretary of State for Africa under the George Bush administration. Connie?
Good afternoon. Welcome to the African Renaissance and Diaspora Network Africa Day celebration. When we join the world in honoring the independence of African countries, it's a proper time that we honor the amazing diverse cultures covering African art, African music, fashions, cuisines, sports, and technology advances. It's time that we honor the girls and women of the diaspora and how the world supports their education and must increase and improve the education systems to prepare them for the important roles they must play. This is also a proper time for us to recognize the role women play in agriculture. Here are the numbers. Women make up 52% of the population and produce 80% of the food on the African continent. Furthermore, this is a proper time to consider advancing women in agriculture by preparing them for their important role. Barriers to women are not acceptable. They are not acceptable and must be removed. As I welcome you, I want to share with you that you're going to be hearing some very impressive people, board members of the African Renaissance and Diaspora Network, as well as the President and Chief Executive Officer, Dr. Jibril Diallo, Permanent Representative of Senegal to the UN, the leadership of the UN organizations such as UN Populations Fund and UN Habitat, and special guests from the international organizations, and importantly, the representatives of the youth. Luckily for you, I'm about to close. But I want to ask you to think about why you came. I don't have time to ask each of you individually, but I want you to think about what questions do you want answered during this session?
Peace TV reporters have been active at the UN headquarters since 2010, the age of former UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon. They are often invited to gather pictures and news about high-level meetings and events at the UN headquarters. We usually report live on the scene the events of dozens of countries, including the US, France, the UK, Israel, Germany, Russia, Egypt, Kuwait, Bulgaria, Ukraine, and Morocco, and the EU at the UN headquarters and their residences in New York. Our news reports have, in part, kept the international community up to date with the work of different governments so that people everywhere will know the great efforts and contributions of the UN to world peace, international affairs, and multilateralism.
Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. Muchas gracias. On a Friday afternoon, before Memorial Weekend in the United States, it's amazing to see so many of you come and be present in this room today. This is the United Nations headquarters. We have 690 participants in person, many of whom are outside getting in, but we need to keep to the time. And then this commemoration, global commemoration of Africa at the United Nations, is being transmitted worldwide. So for you and for those who are present, I wanted to make sure that we say a big thank you, a warm thank you for your making the effort to come here, please. The United Nations headquarters is the most important body that regroups over 194 countries, and a country which has been a strong supporter of the African Renaissance and Diaspora Network is the country of Senegal, which has sponsored this global celebration of Africa Day at the United Nations. Represented here by Senegal is His Excellency Ambassador Jaman Jom, Deputy Permanent Representative of the United Nations of Senegal to the United Nations, who will speak in a moment, and under the oversight of Ambassador Jaman Jom, we have Mr. Abdoulaye Dia here present, who has worked tirelessly to make this happen. So I would like to thank the Ambassador, Deputy Permanent Representative of Senegal to the United Nations, under the oversight of whom Mr. Abdoulaye Dia worked tirelessly, and other members of the mission, to make sure that we are here today where we are celebrating worldwide Africa Day at the United Nations headquarters. Number 3, an event, thank you. An event like this takes a lot of time and energy to put together. And at the outset, I would like to acknowledge the work of the core team that helped to put this event together on a voluntary basis. We have Mr. Gordon Tapper, who is the executive producer. Could you stand up, please, Gordon Tapper? We have Aline Kassif, who is our very strong moderator. We have James Shu, who is the director of programs and legal counsel. He's probably out there trying to get everybody in. We have David Katsiv, who is also out there trying to get everyone in. Here's David. And we have Angela Eme, who's also here, our communication advisor, together with a large team. But this is the core team that helped us put together. And our chair of the board of the African Renaissance and Diaspora Network, Honorable Constance Newman, is based in Washington, D.C., former Assistant Secretary of State for Africa, former head of USAID for Africa. She traveled to New York City to make sure that there's an oversight over this successful organization of the global celebrations of Africa at the United Nations. That's Honorable Constance Newman here present. And all the way from Nairobi, Kenya, we have also the acting executive director of UN Habitat, who took time out of his very, very busy schedule, supported by the director of the New York office of UN Habitat, to come and share his thoughts with us. So let us also welcome the acting executive director of UN Habitat. We need to make sure that we do things right, and we apologize in advance for any inconvenience that may have been experienced by you as you come in here, but these days are days of security, high intense security. So we cooperate with the United Nations security for our own benefit, for our own security. So that is why we're here, and I would like to share the following thoughts with you. This event, the African Renaissance and Diaspora Network, is being organized in partnership with the United Nations Permanent Mission of Senegal, as I said, with the UN Fund for Population Activities, with UN Habitat, with UNEP, with UNDP, and other UN agencies. And this is the annual event which offers a unique platform to celebrate the success and diversity of our continent, the African continent, highlighting the economic and cultural potential of Africa. And by so doing, we also do not forget Afro-descendants, sons and daughters who were removed from the continent over 500 years ago. And I would like to recognize here one of the most senior persons in this room, Professor Leonard Jeffries, here present, with his wife, Zoslyn Jeffries. So the diaspora being present, both the ancient diaspora and the new diaspora being those whose parents came recently to this world and who were born here. So the theme of this year is Women of Diaspora and Agricultural Development. And our aim is that in the coming 2 hours, we want to make sure that we increase public awareness of the crucial role that women play in agriculture, and also underscore the economic and social dimension of African countries and African diaspora. The key focus, and you will hear from a very, very good youth panel here to be moderated by Gordon Tapper, will be education, among others. Both women to empower them through knowledge, and for men to promote allies and equal partnerships. We need a vibrant agricultural sector in order for Africa and the diaspora to thrive in this century, which is the 21st century. We need to recognize and support the role of women in agriculture if we are to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals by the year 2030, and if we are to achieve the African Union's Agenda 2063. Because, let us face it, there have been a lot of progress, but women face several challenges when it comes to agriculture. Women have limited access to land, water, seeds, fertilizers, markets, credit, and also financial services. You have seen in the communication that we sent you in the invitations what the objectives are, and those objectives are within the framework of making sure that we use the convening powers of sports and cultures in order to make sure that we say zero tolerance to gender-based violence. Final point, what is the African Renaissance and Diaspora Network? The African Renaissance and Diaspora Network is an international non-governmental organization which has been recognized by the United States government as a 501c3 status organization, at the same time which has got a status, partnership agreements with several UN agencies, programs and funds. And our special program is really to make sure that we accompany the United Nations in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals in the year 2030. And with that, each one of you has on your chairs a red card with the permission of the ambassador of Senegal, with the permission of the chair of the board. I would like each one of you to take your cards, and I'd like to politely ask you to stand up, and we're going to commit ourselves individually and collectively to making sure that by lifting this card, each one of you lift the cards and repeat after me, please. We commit to using the convening power of sport and cultures to give a red card to all forms of discrimination and violence against women and girls. Zero tolerance to gender-based violence. Thank you very much. You may be seated.
Thank you, Dr. Jallo. Our dear moderator, Mrs. Aten Kadzibe. I think it's the right spelling. Okay, thank you. Thank you. It is always, I love to hear from Dr. Jallo, but it is always very challenging to speak after him. and to share the same panel with him. It is very challenging, but I love to hear from him too. Thank you, Dr. Jallo. Thank you. ASG Acting Director of UN Habitat, Ambassador Milner, used to be here when I was an expert here too. He was a permanent representative here. At the time I was an expert with the second committee. Thank you for being here today. Honorable Mrs. Constance Berry Newman, it is an honor and a pleasure to be with you here. Thank you. Thank you for making all the way from Washington, D.C. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, as Dr. Jallo said, I'm here on behalf of Ambassador Cheikh Niang, who unfortunately can't be here with us because he have other commitment out of New York and asked me to be present here because Senegal, as you know, is sponsoring this event. This timely event, I have to say, on such a very, very relevant theme. I would like to express the fraternal greetings of Ambassador Cheikh Niang. And it is my own pleasure to be here today on his behalf for this celebration. On my introduction remark, I will focus mainly on education because I think it is very important for my country, for elites, as well our financing team have suffered the wear and tear of time and have been severely tested by multiple crises. This is why we in Senegal are all committed.
Very much, Mr. Young. Your presence as host of our forum on Africa Day is a welcome and thought-provoking lead to the next speaker from one of the important UN agencies that ARDN works with in our day-to-day programs. Joining us by video is Mr. Saruman Epi, Chief UNFPA Representation Office of the African Union and the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa. Video.
UNFPA commands the African Union for adopting innovation as its aim by recognizing the profound connection between health and innovation. The African Union endeavors to that health and well-being of women and girls and achieve its innovation goal. It is solely framework for the prosperity of African nation. I would like to applaud the African Renaissance Diaspora Network decision to engage in innovation on women in agriculture in Africa. It is a strong recognition of the role of women and the continent in this field. Although women represent at least 40% of the agricultural workforce on the African continent, African female farmers are lower productivity, not due to the lack of efficiency, but to the lack of equitable access to agricultural inputs. Productivity among African female farmers is also affected by poor quality products that they cultivate, as well as by the inability to invest in adoptive ecology, where 179 UN member states agree that reproductive health, women's empowerment, and gender equality are as well as women's. As we look forward to this future, let us strive for an Africa where every individual, including women, have equal opportunities to thrive. Happy Africa Day.
Dr. Gabriel Jallo, our leader of the African Renaissance Diaspora Network and a good former colleague of the United Nations context. dear Ambassador Jaman Jom, Deputy Permanent Representative of Senegal to the United Nations, and through you I also greet my dear brother and Ambassador Shane Yang, whom we have worked together very closely, and our dear Honorable Constance Mary Newman, former Assistant Secretary of State for Africa, and distinguished friends, visitors, and leaders in the important change that we are all trying to achieve in global matters, including also the most beautiful continent of Africa. I am very pleased to join you today for this great celebration, all the way from Nairobi, Kenya, from the headquarters of UN Habitat, which indeed is the UN Human Settlements Program, focused on sustainable cities, sustainable urban development, housing, urban policies, and our good, sustainable, just, inclusive, and bright urban future. It's really great to be here with you. And I salute the important topic that we are dealing with today on education systems to ensure access to inclusive, lifelong, quality and relevant learning for Africa, which is very close to my heart because before becoming a diplomat, I used to be a school teacher. I was teaching English and Russian at the high school back home in Slovakia, and as they say, once a teacher, always a teacher, and I'm proud of that. I have no... In rural context, our women experience additional challenges. Globally, women constitute approximately 42% of the agricultural workforce, yet many have limited to no access to essential production materials, as has already been mentioned. And they also represent a third of the global population that remains uneducated, and that's particularly alarming and requires really our urgent attention, as Ambassador Yome has also rightly mentioned. These numbers are even higher in conflict or disaster-stricken areas, and we at UN Habitat work very actively in many of the conflict zones and many of the crises situations, whether they are man-made or natural disasters. Additionally, African women face varying degrees of exclusion and marginalization based on their economic status, marital status, religion, and ethnic background. These inequalities severely limit their opportunities to eradicate poverty and create layers of additional challenges, preventing them from accessing their fundamental human rights. Despite the many challenges of women in African cities, African women contribute to between 25 to 65 of the GDP of sub-Saharan Africa and account for 30 to all the way to 90% of total non-agricultural employment. A good example of the contribution of women to the economy is the table banking initiative, championed namely by the First Lady of Kenya, Mama Rachel Ruto. The initiative promotes financial independence of women living in informal settlements, and through the initiative, women groups can save and borrow against their savings for their personal and commercial use. It is often a game changer. It is also important to note that women, youth and children make up the most of the population in the informal settlements or in slums. As we celebrate Africa Day, allow me to reflect a bit on the theme of this event on women of Africa and the diaspora and agricultural development, which is really resonating extremely well with the 2063 agenda and also the 2030 agenda of United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Let me also mention that as we work in cities and human settlements, especially in Africa, and we are present in more than 30 African countries through projects, and in many other countries in Africa through policy advice and support that we are providing. We also promote women's empowerment and gender equality through developing and implementing innovative tools, methods and approaches, such as the Her City Toolkit, which was designed to engage women and girls in driving urban planning processes by co-creating safe, inclusive and accessible public spaces. We have deployed the tool in places such as Nairobi, as well.
Women's land rights and peace building, ensuring that women have equal access to the land they work and live on. And of course, there is also legal services to vulnerable women and a lot of other initiatives. Last but not least, in Mozambique, we provided resilient housing units to young women fleeing from conflict in Cabo Delgado, providing them with adequate and safe housing instead of temporary emergency shelters. This was coupled with capacity building initiatives aimed at boosting their skills towards the construction of resilient houses. In Somalia, women empowerment is also a priority when we connected more than 14,000 households to water supply systems. These concrete actions, innovative policies and practices that benefit women and youth and ensure that gender equality features in all the work we engage in, including in our strategic plan, which will guide us for the next important period, we, in practical terms, advocate for women's rights and equality globally. To conclude, and in the context of Africa Day, I want to reiterate that we at UN Habitat remain committed towards empowering African women and youth, not only in the advocacy perspective, but also through innovative actions at the local level, which is really where all the changes are happening in practical terms. Let me also invite you all to join us for our next World Urban Forum, which will be held in Cairo, in Egypt, from the 4th to the 8th of November. It will be focused on localization of SDGs, bringing all the SDGs down to the local level, and the slogan that we use for the Cairo World Urban Forum says, "It all starts at home." Because we do believe that we need to start from the local and the community level to address the practical needs of our people, including the women, youth, and children. Thank you very much. Enjoy the celebrations.
The call for Africa to free itself also requires a lot of things, but fundamentally among them is that we require us to see the divinity of ourselves, that we begin to see that our divinity is not prescribed by a European God or an Arab God, but we have our own. And now, since we're talking about women, I'll just say one thing. The ancient Egyptians believed that the creator of everything has the darkness of black space. And she arched over the planet, over the solar poles, not the magnetic pole. So Nut became the image of continuity, the image of mother, the image of regeneration, all of those things. So when we reclaim our African sacredness, that will replace the images and the ideologies of our invaders. Thank you.
It is here that anyone chose to plant the seeds of empowerment and equality through her initiatives. At the request of Negro, allow me to say a few words about the Empower Forum. on behalf of anyone. The platform, which is dedicated to elevating the status and influence of women worldwide, will extend its reach to Tanzania in September. This African subforum will connect women entrepreneurs, helping them share knowledge and inspire each other towards greater achievements. To make this upcoming forum more meaningful, Annie is planning to bring some entrepreneurs together with other speakers in order to create real opportunities. Similarly, the World Madam Foundation has catalyzed change, reaching over 40 countries, fostering environments where women can thrive alongside men. As we reflect on Africa's path forward, we see a future shaped by education and empowerment. Today, let's renew our commitment to building resilient systems that provide lifelong, inclusive and quality education to every African, ensuring that no one is left behind. Let's celebrate the spirit of Africa and work together towards a future where every individual can contribute to a sustainable and prosperous continent. So as a gesture of friendship, Annie has requested that I bring several boxes of Chinese tea to present to our esteemed guests today to celebrate Africa Day. To conclude, allow me to extend my special thanks to Deborah. Your invitation has made both Annie and me feel truly honored. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Duan, and please extend our gratitude to Annie Martin for sharing her thoughts as well as this extraordinary boxes of tea. They're quite beautiful. Thank you very much. The next portion of our program features a panel discussion of 3 young people who actively advocate on behalf of Africa and Africans in the diaspora.
Okay, let me ask a question. Is the sound level high enough for you? Can you hear everything that's being said here? Comfortably? Okay, wonderful. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, are you having a good time? Yes. You were here celebrating. We are here celebrating what in 1963 was the Organization of African Unity. When colonialism began to, or should I say, many African countries began to extricate themselves from colonialism. Gradually, over a number of years, all of Africa became part of what is now known as the African Union.
But that is not good enough. We need to hear their perspectives, not when we are packing up our attaché case to get ready to leave, or we are thinking about the bus or the train that we're going to catch, but we need to hear them when we are still clear in mind and able to focus on what they have to say.
So, let me get straight to my speech. It is an honor to be here before you today on Africa Day, a day dedicated to celebrating the rich history, diverse culture, and immense potential of our beloved continent. Today, I would like to focus on a crucial aspect of Africa's development and how it intertwines with the lives of women, the pursuit of self-sufficiency, and our role as an equal partner on a global stage. Agriculture is the backbone of many African economies, providing employment and sustenance to millions. Remarkably, women are the heartbeat of this sector, constituting the majority of the agriculture workforce. They till the soil, plant the seeds, and harvest the crops that feed our nations. Yet, their contribution often go unrecognized and unrewarded. Empowering these women with the tools, knowledge, and resources they need is not just a matter of justice. It is essential for the sustainable development of our continent. Self-sufficiency in Africa is not a distant dream, is it?
Happy Africa Day. So I would like to thank the African Renaissance and Diaspora Network and Mr. Gordon Tapper for the invitation to be part of this esteemed youth panel. My name is Liziana, and I am from Liziana Emokoa, and I'm from Cameroon. And I am a dynamic young leader, who advocates for institutional mechanisms that places young people at the heart of UN and multilateral processes. And I'm also the executive director of the Community Center, the Center for Community Impact and Sustainability in Sierra Leone, and I'm also an ECOSOC consultative representative for the l'Action citoyenne pour l'information et l'éducation au développement durable in Chad, which is actually based in Chad. And lastly, I am a co-lead of the Knowledge and Management sub-team of the Women and Gender Working Group for YOUNGO, which stands for the Youth and the official Youth and Children platform of the UNFPA. And my work as a gender expert, entails mainstreaming gender and with the sustainable development goals, especially SDG 13 and SDG 16. And my work promotes the inclusion of marginalized communities, especially women and young people, to achieving the African Union 2063 agenda.
Happy Africa Day. We can't talk about Africa without mentioning colonialism because no African country is independent. The thoughts of a Muslim Malian woman came into fruition in 2020. However, the journey of it started in my formative years. I was born in New York City, but after a few months of being born, my mom decided to ship me back to Mali, which I am grateful for. I spent preschool through 6th grade in Mali. During those years, my idea of what a developing country started to shift. By the time I completed high school, my English teacher, Miss John, had introduced me to a book titled The Autobiography of Malcolm X.